pick the one that's the best so that he might not die. That's what a hierarchy of competence is for. For the postmodernists, there's no hierarchy that isn't based on power. Well, because they think the world runs on power. And that's why they're willing to use power to get what they want.
Have to
because
be
it's the only thing they believe in. But a valid hierarchy of competence, God, we need those things, man. We need the best plumbers. We need the best contractors. We need the best... We need the best carpenters. We need the best lecturers. There has to be a hierarchy of quality. Not only so that we know who the best are and can reward them properly, but so that we can reward them so they keep being the
30
best.
seconds before you attack.
Like, you know, if
Get
you have a great educator, if you have a great leader,
I feel
if you have a great thinker,
with you
want to reward them so they keep thinking and they keep educating, so they can tell you something. It's not a reward for their intrinsic being. It's a calculated move on your part to suck everything out of them that's valuable as fast as you can. That's what a hierarchy of competence is for.
The battle
and the
starts
idea
in
that
5,
hierarchies of
4,
competence don't exist,
3,
it's so
2,
cynical. It's such
1.
a pathologically
You're not
cynical
going
idea.
anywhere.
And it's actually quite patently untrue.
You need to stop that
Here's
vehicle
an
in its
interesting tidbit
tracks.
from the psychological literature. Let's say you want to determine one of the best predictors of life and success in a Western society. Well, what would you hope? How about intelligence? There'd be a good one. Let's hope that smart people occupy more positions of complexity. Right, because they're smarter. Would you want it any other way? Okay, and that's great. The number one predictor of accomplishment in Western societies is intelligence. So that means the system works. What's the number two predictor? Conscientiousness. So what's that? It's a trait marker for hard work. So who gets ahead? Smart people who work hard. Now, that doesn't every bit the difference in terms of their hierarchies are perfect. They're corrupt. People work hard sometimes because they're psychopathic, although believe me, a hell of a lot less than you think. Because a psychopath has to go from place to place.
My work
Once he reveals himself
disappearing.
as untrustworthy, he has to go find himself to sleep. So the idea that, there's no distinction between a CEO and a psychopath, like, that's only made by someone who A, knows nothing about psychopaths, B, knows nothing about CEOs, and C, has something fundamentally against the entire capitalist structure, because it's simply not true. Corrupt, sometimes, greedy, sometimes, short-sighted, sometimes companies that are doing their best to auger themselves into the ground, and so,
Disappear!
people running a dying organization. But generally speaking, it's not the case. Hierarchies are reasonably functional, and not only are they functional, they're valuable. We need to know who the competent people are, and we need to reward them. And even more important, we need to tell young people, hey, there's some hierarchies of competence out there.
Good medicine.
$1,000.
That is much
Go
better.
be a plumber, man. Be a good one. Be an honest one.
I won't.
I had a plumber once,
Be right back.
It was the night before we were putting drywall in our house. We were redoing a house, and he had put in all the plastic piping, and I was going to test the joints. They're supposed to be glued together with this pipe glue, right? And I told him I had to test the joints. He said, well, you don't have to test my joints. They never leak. I thought, yeah. How about you test them? So I went up to the store, filled the pipe with water. Like half an hour later, like 2 inches of water.
By the eye of Agamotto!
That's the point of that story. But even more so, he had put a bunch of the plastic pipe outside where the drywall would be, so it would have been sticking through the wall. So I spent a frenetic night
isn't sealed yet.
sawing
They hit a
the
checkpoint.
plastic pipe and
Now
regluing
might be
joints
a
so
good time to stop them.
so that the drywallers could come in. What's the point? If you're going to be a plumber, man, be a good plumber. Because otherwise all you do is go up there and cause trouble. We don't need people to cause more trouble. We need people to solve problems. You can be a tradesman, and you can be a lot of money as a tradesperson. It's a bloody, reliable, honorable, forthright, productive way of making a living. And there is a hell of a lot of difference between a working man who knows what he's doing and one who doesn't. Both in terms of skill and effort, right? And you work with someone who knows what they're doing. It's a bloody pleasure. They tell you what they're going to do. They tell you how much it will cost. They go and do it. It works, and you pay.
I am
Perfect. Everyone's happy, and that's what happens.
Release the Globetron!
This is the handlers of egalitarianism and equity, and they fail to recognize the hate because they're all different. Rank between them. it's not such a terrible thing now. Maybe you wouldn't be a great lawyer. Like, it's certainly possible. Most people aren't. That doesn't mean you're not great at it. Lots of hierarchies who attempt to climb and fail at one, you will go try in another. But the point is, you're still trying to aim for the top. What the hell are you going to do?
Feel the wrath of the goddess!
Laugh about uselessly and whine about your life? It's not helpful. It'll just make you miserable and not rely on your plan. You can't help out.
We got your back.
It's like when you tell young people, another message to the children, I don't know what you're going to do. Go out there and make something of yourself. You're an honest person and work and get to the top of whatever it is that you want to get to the top of. You know, and stand up for yourself like a respectable human being and be a bit of a light on the world instead of a blight. You know, and you can tell young people that, and they haven't been told that by anyone now. So young men are so hungry for that that it's painful to watch. They're so relieved with parts of someone fighting out of their keep your ass steady. Just be yourself. Tell the truth. Concentrate on something for you.
Damn it, never fall!
Yeah, right. Why don't you go do it? That's what the damn university is supposed to be teaching you. They've forgotten that.
Just who Randall looking for.
Fresh. And I talked to like,
Beware behind you.
By
the eye of Agamotto!
You're great at it. So like I don't know what the acceptance rate is, like 5%. Not everybody applies. It's a very selective school. And so why am I saying that? It's like, these are high quality kids. So I told them what I just told you. It's like, here you are at Harvard. Get yourself educated, man. Read some books, learn to talk, learn to think. Make yourself into something. Get the hell out there and make the world that put you here happy that you were put there in that great institute. You know, and they came up to me afterwards and said, God, I wish someone would have that with me. We're in our first year. Like, Jesus, why didn't someone tell them that? For God's sake, it's supposed to be the greatest university in the world. It's so difficult to figure that out. So it is, if that is what you want to have happen.
Now you do the same
you want
for
to
me,
make cringing milk sauce and whine about being biscuits while they're going to Ivy League institutions. Jesus, it's pathetic. What should move forward in time with me, and what should be let go as if it's dead wood? And the more dead wood that you let go of and burn off, then you have the opportunity to the rest of the creeks around you. Here's something interesting about forest fires. You know, people have been trying to prevent forest fires for a long time, especially that damn bear smoking like this, trying to prevent forest fires. And so, because forest fires burn up the forest. Here's what happens. If you don't let forest fires burn,
Never fall!
So the amount of flammable material keeps increasing with time.
Just who Randall looking for.
That's not so bad.
Feel the wrath!
The amount of flammable material is increasing when it gets really dry. And then it the forest fire can burn so hot that it burns the topsoil right to the top. In this case, it's a forest valley, and lots of trees are evolved to withstand forest fires of a certain intensity, and some won't even release their seeds unless there's been a fire. And so, a little bit of fire at the right time can stop everything from burning to the ground. And that's also a really useful insight, a metaphorical insight into the nature of sacrifice, right? It's also a lot easier to let go of something when you're deciding to let go of it, because you've decided yourself that you're done with that. It's a weak part of you. It needs to disappear. If you do that yourself, it's much better and much easier than it is if it's taken away from you forcibly, in which case you're going to have to fight it. There's another interesting thing here. A motif that runs through the whole body. It's a very,
By the eye of Agamotto!
You know, in the New Testament, Christ says something like, "My Father's will be done." And he means that will should be done through him.
Now you do the same for me, we.
I don't know to state this exactly right, but it's something like this. You know, a lot of what people regard as their own personalities and are proud of about their own personalities aren't their own personalities at all. They're useless
Only
idiosyncrasies
60 seconds
that
left.
differentiate them trivially from other people. They have no value in and of themselves. They're not like clothes. I remember once I was trying to teach a stubborn student about how to write, and she had written a number of essays
Just who Gambit was looking for.
got university walls for it, and the reason for that was she couldn't write really at all. Really bad at writing. And so I was sitting down with her trying to explain to her what was going on, and she was being very very unwilling to listen. That was a big
Someone clip this!
at one point she said,
Stop that target!
yeah, well, that'd be funny if it wasn't true, but it was also true.
You'll have to keep
You know, and I
fighting
thought,
until we
what the
have a
hell's
winner.
with you? You can't even write, and you think you have a style. And not only do you think,
Don't give them another inch.
Ain't nobody
not
stealing
knowing
Gambit's
how to
chance.
write is not a style. That's the other thing. And so, you know,
Stop that vehicle.
instead of humbling herself, which was necessary, and okay, right? She's a new university student, like the person didn't know how to write. When were you going to learn? In school? I don't think so. So she had this, you know, this style issue, and it just didn't go anywhere at all. And so now let's see, I lost my train of thought telling you all those jokes. Oh yes, in terms of letting things burn off. Yeah, well, so she was proud of her insufficiency. That's arrogance, right? That's not humility. It's self-deception and arrogance. To be proud of your insufficiency, that's a very foolish thing. And that means to cling to the parts
Pick your
of you
hero.
that are dead.
Or villain.
Okay, now,
I'm
there's
not
this
judging.
idea that runs through the Bible, I think, as a whole, that... Okay, I'll tell you another little side story here. I was reading about Socrates today, and I was reading about Socrates'
Make
trial.
way for the
he
king
was
of thieves.
tried by the Athenians for corrupting, for failing to worship the correct gods and corrupting the youth of Athens by like teaching them stuff and asking them questions, you know, which is a great way to corrupt people. And so he knew the trial was coming. And Athens wasn't a very big place. I think about 25,000 people. Everybody knew everybody. Everybody knew who the powerful guys were. And everybody, including Socrates, knew that
30 seconds before
the
you attack.
trial was a
Get
warning
ready.
to like get out of town, right? So we're going to put you on trial in 6 months.
Hey, we're
And
saving
the
the world,
potential
and here
penalty
comes
is
the loosest
death.
cannon.
Got that?
Is that an
It's like,
insult? Because it feels
so
kind of like a
so
compliment.
Socrates had a chat with his
observation.
compatriots, and
The
they
loosest cannon
were
and his
contemplating
sidekick,
fair
Spider-Man.
means and foul
like
to set up a defense for him so that he could, or to lead, so that he could
Battle
not be
starts
tried
in
and put
5,
to death.
4,
And
3, 2,
he decided that he wasn't going to do that, and he
All
also
you need to
decided
do
that he
is capture
wasn't
the mission area.
going to
Got it?
even think about his defense.
Gotta
And
make the
he
teams feel
said
proud.
why, and this is quite
that
an
no
interesting
easy
thing.
trick.
He said why. He told one of his friends that
Ooh-wee. That's
he had this voice in his head,
toying with
came in his spirit, something like that. That he always listened to him, that was one of the reasons he was different from other people. He always listened to him. He didn't tell him what to do, but he told him what not to do. He always told him what not to do. And if he told him not to do something, then he didn't do it. If he was speaking, and the little voice came up and said, no, then he shut up and he tried to say something else. And he's very emphatic about this, and he said that when he tried to plan to evade the trial, or even to mount his own defense, the voice came up and said, no, don't bother. And he thought,
That's
well,
the boost I need.
what the hell do you mean by that? Like, there's a trial coming and I'm going to be put to death. Well, he eventually concluded that he is an old guy. You know, the next 10 years, he was in his 70s. Perhaps the next 10 years was going to be that great for him. He got a chance to maybe bow out, you know, put his affairs in order to say goodbye to everyone, to avoid that last descent into catastrophe, which might have been particularly painful for a philosopher, and to and to walk off the world on his own terms. Something.
I'm fucking helpful.
I'm hit.
I'm good to go.
The point I'm making is that Socrates attended to this internal voice that at least told him what not to do, and then he didn't do it. Someone scratch my back. Today, and we know that he existed in all of those things. And so, back to the walking with God. As you elevate your you create a judge at the same time, right? Because the new ideal, which is an ideal you, even if it's just an ideal position that you might occupy, if you can still conceptualize the right concrete way, that becomes a judge.
By the eye of Akatu!
You're terrified of it, maybe. That's why you might be afraid when you go start a new job, right? Because this thing is above you and you're terrified of it and it judges you. And that's useful because the judge that you're creating by formulating the ideal tells you what's useless about yourself. And then you
You'll have to keep fighting until
and
you
you
have
want to
a
keep
winner.
doing that, and then every time you make a judge that's more elevated, then there's more useless you that has to be dispensed with. And then if you create an ultimate judge, which is what the archetypal imagination of humankind has done
This is real firepower!
man, and therefore the judge. You have a judge that says, get rid of everything about yourself that isn't perfect. Because that's also what that's also what God tells Abraham.
My good deed, I'll patch you up.
You pick an ideal which is high enough, and you can do this. The thing that's interesting about this, I think, is you can do it more or less on your own terms. You have to have some collaboration from other people, but you don't have to pick an external ideal. You can pick an ideal that fills the role of ideal for you. You can say, okay, well, if things could be set up for me the way I need them to be, and if I could be who I need it to be, what would that look like? You can figure that out for yourself. Why don't people look up and move ahead? You start formulating an ideal, you formulate a judge, it's pretty easy to feel intimidated in the face of your own ideal. That's what happens to Cain versus Abel, for example. Then it's really easy to destroy the ideal instead of to try to pursue it, because then you get rid of the judge. But it's way better to lower the damn judge too much. Like if your current ambition is crushing you, then maybe you're trying to silence yourself and you should cut down your ambitions, not to get rid of them by any stretch of the imagination, but at least put them more reasonably within your grasp. You don't have to leap from point 1 to point 50 in one leap, right? You can do it incrementally. But I really like this idea. I think it's a profound idea that the process of recapitulating yourself continually is also the process of, it's a phoenix-like process, right? You're shedding all those elements of you that are no longer worthy of the pursuits that you're evaluating.
This is real!
You shape yourself ever more precisely into something that can withstand the life and that can act as a beacon to the world. That's the right way of thinking about it. Maybe first to your friends and then to your family. It's like it's a hell of a fine ambition, and there's no reason that it can't happen. You know, every one of you knows people who are really bloody useful in crisis, and people that you admire, right? Those are all. You can think of all those people as you admire as partial incarnations of the archetypal Messiah. That's exactly right. And the more that
30
manifests
seconds
itself
before
in
you
any
attack.
given person,
Get
then
ready.
the more generally useful and admirable that person is in a multitude of situations.
If your name is
We
White
don't know the
Fox,
limit to that.
then why is
But
your
people
spy
can be
organization called
unbelievably good
Tiger
for
Division?
things, you know?
Tiger
It's
Division
really
existed
something to
long
behold.
before I was named its
The
director.
Soviets,
My
given
Google
their
powers
idea
are
of class
entirely
guilt,
unrelated.
sounds a lot like
Okay, but
white
still,
privilege
if I
to
give
me,
my buddy
or
Jeff
any
the
other
land
form of
shark,
racism.
join
The battle starts in 5, 4,
They used that
3,
doctrine to just round
2,
up all the kulaks.
1.
They were the productive farmers.
All you
Shipped
need to
them
do
off
is
to
capture the
Siberia.
mission area.
6 million
Got it?
Ukrainians starved to death, but you know,
I'm
they
the
had
last
too
of
many
my
Ukrainians
people.
anyway, so it didn't really
And I
matter.
plan to make them
So,
proud.
anyways, back to the postmodern types. Well, you know, this all was revealed in such painful detail that even the kind of closed-minded ideologists couldn't quite muster up the will for it to keep beating the same damn drum. So what they did instead, these highly intelligent individuals played by the hand and transformed these Marxist presuppositions into postmodernism in the 1970s. And the idea basically was, well, the working class is going to rise up and crush the bourgeoisie because, first of all, they're getting rich, and that wasn't supposed to happen.
Gonna have to play X-Men and
Missionary is
that occurred, let's say, in Russia. And so maybe we won't do that anymore because the working class actually isn't buying into this either, which is also a problem. You know, having internalized their own oppression, they wouldn't buy into it.
by the eye of Agamotto.
Maybe it's because they have no sense. Certain thoughts just like it was, oh, well, fine, we're going to play this one. Oppressive game. You know, it's identity politics. You're not being oppressed because you're a member of the working class. You're being oppressed because you're a woman. Or you're being
Ain't
oppressed
nobody
because
stealing
you have an ethnicity that's outside the main
Some
paradigm,
of my best
whatever
friends
that
are
might
crooks
be.
and villains.
Or it's because of your sexual preference or your sexual identity, whatever places you in some manner outside the normative culture. And,
Well,
you know,
okay.
the thing is, the postmodernists, you know, you might
Relay
think, well, your
deployed.
culture
It
is good
ain't
for
cheap.
something. It gives you a hierarchy of values.
You're
it
ready
rewards
for
competent
action.
people. It gives you a direction so you can climb up, you know, because otherwise everything's leveled to nothing, and then why do anything? They don't care about any of that. They don't believe that there's any such thing as competence. They don't believe that there's This is all postmodernism, right? It's all of that out. And so when the postmodernists analyze the text, all they care about is how it's privileged and that's the only thing they regard as real. And they don't believe in grand unifying narratives. They don't believe that there's a Canadian identity. They don't believe that there's an American identity. They don't believe that there's a Western identity. They don't believe that value structures exist, or if they are, they're irreplaceable with some other value structure. They certainly don't believe that they have any biological grounding, that there's any such thing as a human being. It's all socially constructed. It's really what you want to do is you're the author of this fairly social constructed utopia that you can run.
You captured one in the area. Keep going.
I would say they're not as good as infants as women are because they don't have and they're not. I don't think
This is real firepower!
immediately understand for a fraction of the I think the switches around the age of 2 or 3 when kids can engage in love because men are much more likely to engage with children than women
Here
are.
comes
And
Rocket
rock and
again.
roll play seems to be one of the things that civilizes
Larry is
children.
almost yours.
And it's partly because, you know, one of the things that you have to learn when you're a child is what
You're
actually hurts you and what can be ignored and what actually hurts someone else and what can be ignored. And the best way to learn that is in rough and tumble play. Because what happens is that if you're playing, they get more and more excited and they do more and more crazy things until they do something that either hurts them or hurts you. And then
Here no, you'll have to keep fighting until we
can't
have
do
a winner.
that. And it's like a dance. Continue the game. I mean, you can tell that.
You're ready for
The game's going well, they're laughing. Kids just love running. You know, and they love crazy things. So the air attachment, they think that's just great. But partly what you're doing is you're extending your body in all sorts of ways and getting them to learn in an embodied sense where the limits of where their limits are and where the limits of other people are, and that's embodied. And children who haven't had that, and they're just so
Victory!
unbelievable. You know, they might have some hypothetical sense of how to interact with another person, but they don't have a embodied sense, and they can't tell the difference between what hurts them and what doesn't. You know, because often a young child, if they're startled, they'll start to cry. And then you can say, well, you know, that didn't hurt. And then they'll notice, oh yeah, that didn't hurt. They'll stop crying. But if they haven't had their limits set, they'll cry at anything unexpected, even if it doesn't hurt. And that's not good, because if you cry under all conditions, the probability that you'll make friends when you're 3 is like 0, because another kid will start playing with you and maybe play rough.
You'll need a
And if you
top-notch
burst into
team to
tears,
win this one.
You know, several times, the kid's just going to go somewhere else and find a different playmate. You know, they'll say, you're just a baby.
Your attention, for example, is mediated by unconscious forces. And you know that perfectly well. And this is another Freudian observation. You know, if you're sitting
Make
down
way for the king of
to
thieves.
study, for example, your conscious intent is to study, but you know perfectly well that all sorts of distraction fantasies
Gonna have
are
to
going
play
to enter the
X-Men
theater of
and
your
Team if you
imagination
wanna win this one.
non-stop and annoyingly, and there isn't really a lot you can do about that except maybe wait it out.
30 seconds
so
before you
you'll be
attack.
sitting there
Get
reading
ready.
and your attention will flicker away. You'll think about, I don't know, maybe you want to watch Jane the Virgin on Netflix or something like that, or maybe it's time to have a peanut butter sandwich, or you should get the dust bunnies out from underneath the bed, or it's time to go outside and have a cigarette, or maybe it's time for a cup of coffee, or it's like all these subsystems in you that would like something aren't very happy just to sit there while you read this thing that you're actually bored by, and so they pop up and try to take control of your perceptions and your actions non-stop. Maybe you think, well, this is a stupid course anyway. Why do I have to read this damn paper? And what am I doing in university? And what's the point of life? It's like you can really get going if you're trying to avoid doing your homework. And then you might think, well, what is it in you to tell you to avoid? After all, you took the damn course and you told yourself to sit down. Why don't you listen? Well, because you're a man. That's basically why.
You thought you got
You
rid
haven't
of me?
got control
How'd
over
it
yourself
go?
at all. And no more than I have control over this laptop. Okay, so there's the memory function of the unconscious, and there's the dissolutive function. That's an interesting one. The unconscious contains habits, once voluntary, now traumatized, dissociated elements.
Now you do the same to me,
Maybe
Lee.
the parasites existing. That's an interesting one. I would relate that more to procedural memory. You know, so what you've done is practice certain habits, whatever they can be. Let's call them bad habits. And you like those things to get under control, but you can't. So maybe when you're speaking, for example, you use like and you know, and you say I'm a law. And you practice that, and you're really good at it. And you let you stop it, but you don't have to, because you build that little machine right into your being, right? It's neurologically wired. And it's not under conscious control. Anything you practice becomes that. It becomes part of you, and that's another element of the unconscious, a different part. And then there's a creative part, which is that, well, you know, you're sitting around and maybe you're trying to write something, or maybe you want to produce a piece of art or a piece of music, or maybe you're just laying in bed dreaming, and you have all these weird ideas, and especially in dreams, like, where do those things come from? And even more strange, one of the things that's really weird about dreams, possibly weird, is that you're an observer in the dream. It's like a dream is something that happens to you. Well, you're dreaming it, theoretically. So how is it that you can be an observer? It's almost like you're producing it, at least in principle. Although the psychoanalysts would say, well, no, not exactly. Your ego is your unconscious. Again! Thing, and of course Jung would say, well, it's deeper than that. The collective unconscious might be producing it. It's in some sense, it isn't you exactly, or it isn't the you that you think of when you think of you. And that's the ego from the Freudian perspective, the you that you identify with. That's the ego.
There's still a chance to
And
stop
outside
them.
of that is the unconscious, the id. That's more the place of impulses. You could think about those as the biological subsystems that can derail your thinking, right? And they govern things like hunger and sex and aggression. And it's a reasonable way of thinking about it, because these are subsystems that you share with animals. You share them certainly with most of them with reptiles. You share a lot of them with amphibians, and even going all the way down to crustaceans. There's commonalities, for example, in the dominant phylum. These are very, very old things. And the idea that you're in control of them is, well, you're not exactly in control of them. And I would say the less integrated you are, the less you're in control. And the more they're in control of you, that can get really out of hand. You can be, like with people who have obsessive compulsive disorder, for example, which seems to be, I would say, the dissolutive elements in some sense of the unconscious, the way that it's portrayed here. Poor people with obsessive compulsive
make the
disorder,
same
they can spend
mistakes
half
again.
their time doing
Don't
things
mess
that they
with the
can't really
amazing
control, and they have very
Spider-Man!
strong impulses to do
Better
them.
stop that vehicle!
And it's very
It's
hard
now
on
or
them to
never.
block them.
Stop them!
They'll almost panic if those things are blocked. And then you have people with Tourette's syndrome, you know, that they'll be doing all sorts of weird dances and finding off obscenities and imitating people without being able to control it, and and
Disappearing.
sometimes a little bit of antipsychotic medication can dampen that down, but it's as if there are these autonomous
That's better.
semi-spirits inside of them that grip control over the behavior, and you can do things.
Kill! Don't give
You know,
them
you
another
find that to
chance.
some degree in your own life, because maybe you become very attracted to someone, even maybe you don't want to be attracted to the person, and then you find yourself, you know,
Someone
texting them when you know
clip
perfectly well that you should be going to bed, but, you know, you're in a good
Armed and dangerous!
This is the Peter Pan story, roughly speaking. This Peter Pan is this magical boy. Pan means roughly speaking. So it's not an accident. It's the name Pan. And he's the boy who
Not
grew
going
up.
anywhere.
He's magical. Yeah, that's
The real magic.
They can do anything.
We work together.
They're nothing but potential. And Peter
that's
Pan
better.
doesn't want to give that up. Why? Well, he's got some adults around him, but the main adult is Captain Hook. Well, who the hell wants to grow up to be Captain Hook? First of all, you've got a hook. Second, you're a pirate. And third, you're chased by the dragon of tails with the flockiness stuff. Right? Flockiness. Always got a piece of you. So that's what happens when you get older. Time has already got a piece of you. And eventually, it's got a taste of it. And eventually, it's going to eat you. And so Hook is so traumatized by that he can't help but be a pirate. And then Peter Pan traumatized Hook. He says, well, no, I'm not sacrificing my children for that. So that's fine, except he ends up becoming a lost boy. In Neverland, well, Neverland doesn't exist. Who the hell is it? The lost boy.
Damage sustained.
And he also has the possibility of becoming real
Hey, Chad! Someone clip this!
conservative, middle class, London.
Armed and dangerous! Again!
She doesn't even exist. She's like
My fate now.
she's like
A
the fairy
disappearing.
in form. She doesn't exist. She's the substitute for the real
Well,
thing.
you can't expect to win them
So,
all.
but the dichotomy that you're talking about is very tricky because there's a sacrificial element in creation. Right? You have to sacrifice the pluripotentiality of childhood for the actuality of a frame. And the question is, well, why would you do that? Well, one reason is it happens to you whether you do it or not. You can either choose your damn limitation, or you can let it take you unaware when you're 30, or even worse when you're 40. And then that is not a happy day. And I see people like this, and I think it's more and more common in our culture because people can put off maturity without suffering an immediate penalty. But all that happens is the penalty accrues, and then when it finally hits, it just wallops you. Because when you're 25, you can be an idiot. It's no problem. Even when you're out in a job search, it's
You'll
like, well, you
need a
don't have any
top-notch
experience and
team to
you're kinda
win this
clueless.
one.
It's, yeah, you're young. You know, it's no problem. That's what young people are like, but they're full of potential. Okay, well, now you're the same person at 30. It's like people aren't so thrilled about you at that point. It's like, what the hell have you been doing for the last 10 years? Well, I'm just as clueless as I was when I was 22. It's, yeah, but you're not 22. You're an old infant, right? And that's an ugly thing, an old infant.
Open your eyes.
So,
reality is but
part
an
of the reason
illusion.
you choose your damn sacrifice, because the sacrifice is inevitable. But at least you get to choose.
I
And then
would
there's
knit the
something
dimensions
that's
back
even more
together if it
complex
were within
in some
my
sense
power.
is that the problem with being a child is that all you are is potential. And it's
30
really no
seconds before you
resolution.
attack.
You could be
Get
anything,
ready.
but you're not anything. So then you go and you adopt an apprenticeship, roughly speaking. And then you become something. And when you're something, that makes the world open up to you again. You know, like if you're a really good plumber, then you end up being far more than a plumber. Right? You end up being a good employer. Not the plumbers. I'm not putting plumbers down.
battle
It's
starts in
more
5,
power to plumbers.
4,
They've saved more
3,
lives than doctors.
2,
So
1.
hygiene.
All you need
So,
to do is capture the
you
mission
know, if you're
area.
a really good
Got
plumber,
it?
well then you have some employees, you run a business,
You think this is a challenge?
you train some other people, you all their lives, you're a pillar of the community, you have a
I am
family.
strengthened for battle.
Once you pass through that narrow training period, which narrows you restrictions, and then you can kind of come in with a bunch of new possibilities at hand. And you're really talking about property.
Nothing here.
Part of suspicious how to develop life, rediscover child that you left behind as you were apprentice. So then you get to do something.
An unseen escape.
Gain that potential. Very good. Very wise. Very wise thing to know. So, yep. Sacrifice. We'll talk more about that too. You get
I
to pick
tend
your
to
damn
lost
sacrifice.
souls, like a
That's all.
shepherd tends
You
to
don't-
his
you're not
flock.
equal. You're sacrificial whether you want to be or not. That's a good thing to know as well. So even though it's rather, it's a rough thing to figure out. Other questions?
I require some aid.
Please cover me.
Yeah.
Cosmic might returns.
Because you can go to university to not do something instead of going to university to do something.
Much better.
And it's pleasure art. And the price you pay for it, especially in the US, is death. And you're enticed
You'll
into
have
it
to call
because
in
the
heavier
administrators
hitters,
take
Namor.
the cost. So they are involved with future self while allowing you to pretend that you have an identity. Right? Very nasty. And you can't declare bankruptcy with your student loans in the US. It's indentured
Healing
servitude.
power.
And it is precisely exactly that. And so tuition fees are shot way out of control. And part of the reason that universities take advantage of this
Armed and dangerous!
why the hell would you chase them out?
Turret is injured.
$100,000. So they can do whatever they want. You get to sell them to the salt mines. Right.
Forward again!
The other thing is healing power. The rate of technological transformation is so fast now. The rate of turnover is that it is genuinely harder for people who are saying the second chance. When I was a kid, roughly speaking, it's a kind of rough patch for life is probably 14 to 17, something like that. Now it's, I think it's 18 to 25, something like that. And I think the reason I feel better already. All the jobs that the bloody business complained about being doomed to do in the 1960s. Their problem
much
was,
better.
oh my God, I'm going to go have to work for a corporation and get a salary for the rest of my life. And then I'll just end up with pension. That'll be my whole life.
Please.
So, some of it is that. It's just, there's a space now in our culture that is lacking for people to make that transformation from adolescence into adulthood. And so it's just, the cost of that is forestalled. It's not a good thing. It's not a good thing. Now, you've got these two evil creatures here, the fox and the cat.
Only
This one's
60
based
seconds
on one
left.
of the Marx brothers, actually, Harpo Marx, who I believe never said anything.
I was fine.
But be that as it may, here are the characters. The
Cosmic might
The
return.
fox is the standard Christopher Adams, right? It's
Armed and dangerous!
animal.
Much
Maybe
better.
because it's good at hiding, it's good at I don't know exactly why, but and coyotes are like that too. They're classic. He's kind of like Wile E. Coyote.
Down to 30 seconds.
Warner Brothers character who's genius at large, and of course, whose arrogance continually gets him walloped. And this character has a lot of features like that.
I'll patch you up.
He feigns being an English gentleman like the 1890s. He pretends to be educated and he has a kind of high-blown way of talking. He's a fraud through and through. He's got barely there at all.
Let's keep fighting until we have a winner.
But he's got someone to lord it over, so that keeps his dormant thing going well. The fact that he's like a second
never miss.
companion,
Well,
he never
you
really
can't
notices
expect to
that,
win 'em
although
all.
he'll treat him contemptuously whenever he gives a chance. So anyways, they're walking down the street and the fox is bragging away about some crooked thing that he's done and how he pulled the wool over someone's eyes. He confuses that with wisdom and intelligence. And one of the things that you see, this is worth knowing too, because if you're preyed upon by a psychopath, which you will be to some degree at some point in your life. The psychopath, who will be narcissistic,